Hi, it's Susan from Stratus, and today I'm going to talk about school selection, or how to create your own top 10 list. At Stratus, we use a framework which we refer to as the 7 C's. I'm going to call them all out for you first and then drill down on them. So first and foremost, you need to think about your career goals. And then to do more research, you need to think about your competitiveness. You need to think about the curriculum at each school. You need to look at clubs. You need to evaluate the community and culture of the programs you're exploring. You need to communicate with students and alumni. And finally, you need to consider the cost. So let's go on this. In terms of career goals, there are 2 parts of this. First is your long-term career goals or your aspirations. These can be rather broad. You need to be able to think about kind of what role do you want to be in? Not specifically the title, but do you want to be a visionary or do you want to be an executor? Who do you want to be working with? Do you want to be leading others or not? What industry or function do you see yourself in? Who do you see yourself working with? Is it just within your own company, or might it be supporting clients or collaborating more broadly across a variety of organizations that may be private companies, nonprofits, government organizations, or things beyond that? And perhaps most importantly, what is the problem you want to solve and what impact do you want to make in your career? So that is your career aspirations. No less important, perhaps more important for admissions committee, is what is your short-term goal? Post-MBA, what is the role you see yourself taking? This particular role should be ambitious, yet achievable. And as you think about it, you want to make sure that you are clearly communicating the industry you want to be in, the function you want to be in, and perhaps even the geography. You want to be so specific that as 3 or 4 different people read your application, or as you're doing an interview, everyone who touches your application is understanding precisely the same thing. So in terms of being specific, you might say, I would like to be a product manager at a consumer-facing technology company, such as Meta or Amazon. Now, in using those 2 company names, you are kind of articulating that you want to be in an established company rather than perhaps an early stage or a growth stage company. Those things are important as an admissions committee is evaluating your profile. After you think about your career goals, you need to reverse engineer into why do you need an MBA? What are the skills, the knowledge, and the relationships that you need to develop during your time in business school to set yourself up to be a viable candidate for that short-term post-MBA career goal, right? So keeping in mind those areas for development, let's go into the other C's of the framework. We've talked about career goals. Next is competitiveness. As you all know, getting into a top business school is super competitive. Some schools like Stanford have a single-digit admit rate, sometimes as low as 6%. In the top 10 or 15 programs, the admit rates are almost all below 25%. So these are just hard schools to get into. And in the US, these schools care about your statistics because numbers drive rankings and rankings drive the number of applications. The more applications they have, the more people they can deny. And so their admit rate gets lower and their yield perhaps gets higher. These are all things that admissions committee is considering. So you need to think about how competitive you are vis-a-vis other candidates. And the big things to be looking at are your GPA, if it's on a 4.0 scale. How does it stack up to the average at the programs you're looking at? And the other stat that you should be looking at is your test score. How does your GMAT or GRE or even executive assessment stack up against what the averages are, and perhaps more importantly, the 80% range of test scores at those schools? So depending on how competitive you are, It's going to define what programs you should be applying to. So we've talked about career goals, we've talked about competitiveness. Now let's talk about curriculum. Business school is all about learning. It is school, not just a networking 2 years. So be mindful of what knowledge and skills you need to develop and how you learn best. Every school has a unique curriculum. Most schools have some core classes that you will need to take. Harvard, everyone takes the same core classes. At Booth, polar end of the spectrum, there's only one core class. Otherwise, you pick your own adventure. Some schools have leveling of a variety of classes in the core, or provide the opportunity to pass out of a class based on previous coursework in that area, or perhaps your business experience. Beyond the core, think about what are the electives that you want to pursue. And do you need to do a deep dive in a specific function or industry? Are there majors? Are there certificates, pathways, or concentrations that align with your goals and your areas for development? Explore those. And finally, as you think about curriculum, think about the teaching methodology. How do you learn best? Do you need lectures? Are you going to thrive in a case-based classroom? Or are you someone who needs experiential learning? Ways, opportunities to test what you've learned in a real-world scenario. Think about your previous learning experiences and how you have best internalized the information that you needed and develop the skills that are essential for you to achieve your goal. Next, let's talk about clubs. Clubs are an important part of most business school experiences. These are not just for fun. And in fact, at many schools, a lot of your learning is going to happen through the clubs that you become part of. There are really 3 different types of clubs. There are industry and functional clubs, so kind of the career-based clubs, such as the consulting club or the venture capital and private equity club or the marketing club. There are affinity clubs where you might come together with people who have similar backgrounds to yours. So that might be the Women in Business Club. It might be the European Students Association, or it might be the Hillel Club at a particular school. And finally, there are interest-based clubs, such as the wine club or the golf club or the soccer club or the improv club. These are great ways to meet people who have similar interests to you. And in any of these different types of clubs, taking a leadership role will allow you to start testing some of the skills you've learned in the classroom in a safe environment where you can fail and no one's going to lose their job. So we've talked about your career goals. We've talked about competitiveness, about curriculum and clubs. Next thing I want to talk about is community or culture. Business school may just be 2 years for you, but think beyond those 2 years. The people that you go to school with are going to be your people for the remainder of your career. So this isn't just a 2-year decision. It's a 20, 30, or maybe even 40-year decision for you. So you want to think wisely. Who are the people you want to be around? Do you want to be in a competitive environment, or would you thrive more in a collaborative environment? Do you want to be in a really big program where there are 700, 800, or 900 students in your class? Or would you prefer a more intimate class with only 200 or 300 students? Where are you going to thrive? This is a question that you need to be asking yourself. And finally, what sort of environment do you want to be in? Do you want to be in a city? Do you want to be in a more controlled environment where the only reason that people in your class are there is because there's a business school and they are all into that community that you're part of? All important things to consider. The next C that we're going to talk about is communication. The best way for you to learn about the culture, about the clubs, and about the curriculum is to have conversations with current students or alumni. You should go into these conversations prepared to talk about your career goals and your areas for development, and have specific questions about the curriculum, the clubs, and what the community is like. Many schools have ambassadors who are available to have conversations with prospective students. Tap into those resources and do your homework. There's no reason you should not be able to have these conversations as you explore the resources at each program. And the final C is cost. We all know that going to business school is a very expensive endeavor. For many of you, you will leave a well-paying job for 2 years, sacrifice that salary, and be paying out close to $200,000 in tuition. You want to choose wisely here. Everyone has their own risk tolerance. There are some people who don't want to pay to go to business school. They want to come out debt-free. There will definitely be schools that will give people scholarships. Harvard and Stanford give only need-based financial aid. Most other schools will offer scholarships based on the strength of your profile and of your application and how they see you fitting into their community. So having done your research allows you to present the strongest possible application and put you in the consideration set for getting scholarship. So hopefully this framework of 7 C's for school selection is helpful to you. Again, start with your career goals. Think about how competitive you are. Explore the curriculum. Look into the clubs, the career treks, the conferences, the case competitions, all the things that those clubs offer. Look at the community or culture. And if you are applying with a partner or will have a trailing partner come with you or even a family, be mindful of how that community will welcome your family. Finally, make sure to communicate to drill down on what the resources are and how you will use them. And don't forget about cost. Wishing you all the best as you put together your top 10